A little girl begged, "Sir, that man is following me." What the hell's angel did next will shock you. The sun hung low in the afternoon sky, casting long shadows across Main Street. Jack Ridge Callahan sat alone at a metal table outside Millie's diner, his weathered hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. The cooling liquid inside had long since stopped steaming, but he hadn't noticed. His thoughts were miles away, years away. Ridge cut an intimidating figure, even in stillness. His leather vest bore the patches and colors that made mothers pull their children closer when he passed. Silver threads, scattered through his dark beard, matched the streaks in his pulled-back hair. Deep lines marked his face like a map of hard roads traveled. He took a slow sip of the lukewarm coffee. Tuesday afternoons were always quiet in Mapleton. That's why he chose them for his weekly ritual: coffee, silence, and the weight of memories he couldn't outrun. "More coffee, Ridge?" Doris, the waitress who'd been serving him for nearly 8 years, approached with a pot. She was one of the few who didn't shy away from him. "I'm good." His voice was gravel and smoke. She nodded and retreated, used to his sparse words. Ridge watched her go, then turned his attention back to the street. The hardware store across the way was putting up sale signs. A couple walked hand in hand down the sidewalk, leaning into each other. An old dog slept in the shade of the barbershop awning. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story Normal Life. Something he observed but hadn't truly participated in for years. His fingers absently traced the faded photo he kept in his vest pocket, a small, worn rectangle that he never showed anyone. Some wounds never healed, just scarred over, leaving tender spots that ached when the weather changed, or when he saw a little girl with blonde pigtails, or heard a certain laugh that echoed from his past. Today marked 14 years. 14 years since Emily, his daughter, his world. The light that went out on a rainy Thursday, when he should have been watching more carefully, when the truck came too fast around the corner, and he wasn't quick enough to pull her back. Ridge closed his eyes, feeling the familiar burn behind his eyelids. The colors of his vest might suggest otherwise, but there were kinds of pain even the toughest men couldn't ride away from. He drained the last of his coffee, bitter and cold, like the memories. The cup made a dull sound as he set it down. A few sparrows pecked at crumbs near his boots. Somewhere down the block, a car horn honked twice. Life kept going, whether you wanted it to or not. That was maybe the cruelest lesson. Ridge checked his watch. An old, scratch thing that had seen better days. Almost 4. Soon the school buses would arrive, flooding the street with noisy kids and watchful parents. His cue to leave, usually. The daily exodus of children was a reminder he didn't need. As he reached for his wallet to leave a tip, something caught his eye. Across the street, partially hidden by a parked delivery truck, stood a small figure. A little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with light brown hair falling around her shoulders. She wore a pink shirt that seemed too big and jeans with a flower patch on one knee. Ridge paused, his hand still in his pocket. Something about her seemed off. She wasn't playing or moving with the carefree bounce of most kids her age. Instead, she stood unnaturally still, her shoulders hunched forward, her head constantly turning as if looking for something. Or someone. His eyes narrowed slightly. Years in the club had taught him to read body language, to spot trouble before it announced itself. This little girl radiated fear. She shifted, stepping partly into the sunlight, and Ridge could see her face more clearly now. Wide eyes darted around the street, her bottom lip caught between her teeth. She looked lost, but it was more than that. The way she kept glancing over her shoulder reminded Ridge of someone being hunted. The girl's gaze suddenly swept across the diner patio and locked with his. For a moment, neither moved. Something passed between them, a recognition that transcended age and circumstance. the universal language of those who know what it means to be afraid. Ridge's hand fell away from his wallet as he watched the little girl look both ways before crossing the street. Her movements were quick and anxious, like a small animal venturing out into the open. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her tiny hands balled into fists at her sides. Something inside Ridge went very still. It was the kind of stillness that came before action, a focusing of senses he'd developed over decades of riding with the club. He sat straighter, his coffee forgotten. The girl reached the sidewalk in front of Millie's diner and hesitated. Up close, Ridge could see her shoes were scuffed, and her hair hadn't been brushed in some time. Dark smudges under her eyes made her look even younger, more vulnerable. She spotted him watching her and froze. For a heartbeat, Ridge thought she might run away. Instead, she seemed to make a decision. Her small chin lifted slightly, and she walked directly toward his table. Ridge remained motionless, not wanting to frighten her. Children usually gave him a wide berth, parents pulling them away with whispered warnings when they saw his vest and patches. But this little one came straight to him, her steps slowing only when she reached the edge of his table. "Hello there," Ridge said, softening his normally gruff voice. He'd once known how to talk to children, a lifetime ago. The girl didn't answer. Her eyes, large and the color of warm honey, studied his face with an intensity that felt much older than her years. She was close enough now that Ridge could see a small scar above her right eyebrow and a dusting of freckles across her nose. She reached out one small hand and tugged gently on the leather of his vest. The touch was barely there, like a butterfly landing, but Ridge felt it like an electrical current. No one touched him anymore, certainly not with such innocent trust. "Sir?" Her voice was thin and shaky, just above a whisper. Ridge leaned forward carefully, moving with deliberate slowness. "Yes?" "I need—" She swallowed hard, her throat working visibly. "I need help, please." The words hung in the air between them. Ridge glanced around, looking for a parent, a caretaker, anyone who might belong with this child. The street remained ordinary, unchanged. No one was rushing over, calling a name, searching for a missing daughter. "Where's your mom or dad?" he asked, keeping his tone gentle. The little girl's lower lip trembled. She shook her head once, a quick, jerky movement. "Not here." Ridge nodded, accepting this without pushing. Years of reading people told him when questions would only build walls. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered, her fingers still clinging to his vest. "I'm Lily." "I'm Ridge." He offered his hand without thinking, then wondered if he'd frighten her with its size and the scars across the knuckles. But Lily placed her tiny palm against his for just a moment. Her hand was cold despite the warm day. "You look—" She paused, searching for words. "You look strong, like you're not scared of anything." A sad smile touched Ridge's lips. If only she knew the things that terrified him. "Everyone's scared of something, Lily." She moved closer then, looking up at him with those solemn eyes. "Are you scared of bad men?" The question hit Ridge like a fist to the chest. He felt his pulse quicken, old instincts awakening. "Did someone hurt you?" Lily shook her head again, but her eyes darted to the street behind her. "Not yet," she said, her voice smaller than before. Ridge felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a protective fury rising in his chest. He didn't move, didn't let it show on his face. But inside, something fundamental shifted. "Lily," he said carefully, "why did you come to me for help?" Her answer was simple. "You look like the heroes in books, the ones who save people." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through him. Ridge, who hadn't felt like anyone's hero in 14 long years, didn't know what to say. Lily stepped even closer, standing right beside his knee now. She reached up and tugged his vest again, this time pulling him down toward her. Ridge leaned forward, and she cupped her small hand around her mouth, as if sharing an important secret. "Sir," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear, her voice trembling. "That man is following me." Ridge's entire body tensed. The world around him sharpened into crystal focus. The sounds of the street, the position of people nearby, exits and obstacles, all catalogued in an instant. The protective instinct that had stirred moments before now roared fully awake, bringing with it a clarity he hadn't felt in years. His eyes narrowed as he straightened, one hand automatically moving to rest reassuringly on Lily's small shoulder. "Which man, Lily?" he asked, his voice calm but alert. Ridge knelt down to Lily's eye level, his weathered face softening. The leather of his vest creaked as he moved, a sound that usually made people flinch. Lily didn't budge. "I'm going to help you, okay?" Ridge kept his voice steady, the way he might speak to a frightened animal. "Can you show me where this man is without looking directly at him?" Lily nodded, her honey-colored eyes wide but trusting. "Smart girl," Ridge said. He stood slowly, wincing as his bad knee protested. Getting old wasn't kind to a man who'd lived hard. He offered his large, calloused hand to Lily. She hesitated only a moment, before slipping her tiny fingers into his palm. The contrast was stark, her small hand disappearing into his rough one. Something protective surged through Ridge's chest, a feeling he'd buried long ago. "Is there somewhere you feel safe?" he asked, scanning the street with practiced casualness. Years in the club had taught him how to observe without seeming to. Lily pointed with her free hand. "The park. There's a lady who feeds the birds. She's nice to me." Ridge nodded. "Then that's where we'll go. Just walk normal, like we're out for a stroll. Can you do that?" Lily squeezed his hand and straightened her small shoulders. "I can pretend we're going on an adventure." A ghost of a smile touched Ridge's lips. "That's exactly right." They set off down the sidewalk, an unlikely pair, the massive biker with his patched vest, and the tiny girl with untied shoelaces. Ridge adjusted his long stride to match her short steps. He kept his posture relaxed, but his eyes never stopped moving. "Do you live near here, Lily?" Ridge asked, his voice casual, while his senses remained on high alert. "Sometimes," she answered, looking at her feet. "We move a lot." The vague answer set off warning bells in Ridge's mind. Something wasn't right in this child's life, even beyond being followed. "The park's just around this corner," Ridge said. "Tell me about this bird lady." As Lily chattered about an elderly woman who brought bread crusts for the sparrows, Ridge caught a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. Someone had stepped out from between buildings across the street, then quickly moved back into the shadows. Ridge squeezed Lily's hand gently. "You're doing great," he murmured. "Keep talking about the birds." The park came into view. A modest green space with benches, swing sets, and a small pond. Several people sat scattered throughout. A mother with a stroller, two teenagers on skateboards, an old man reading a newspaper. Ridge's eyes swept over each one, assessing. "The bird lady sits by the water," Lily said, tugging him toward the pond. Ridge allowed himself to be led while maintaining his vigilance. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, a sensation he'd learned never to ignore. Someone was watching them. "Is she here today?" he asked, scanning the benches near the water. Lily's face fell. "I don't see her." "That's okay," Ridge said. "Let's sit for a minute anyway." They settled on a bench with a clear view of the park entrance and surrounding paths. Ridge positioned Lily on the inside of the bench, his body creating a shield between her and most of the park. "Are you hungry?" he asked, remembering the half-eaten muffin in his jacket pocket. He'd wrapped it in a napkin earlier, planning to finish it later. Lily nodded, her eyes lighting up as Ridge pulled out the slightly squished blueberry muffin. She accepted it with both hands, like it was treasure. "Thank you," she whispered before taking a small, careful bite. Ridge watched her eat, his heart aching at how such a simple offering seemed to mean so much. While she concentrated on the muffin, he continued his surveillance, cataloging every person in view. That's when he saw him. A man stood partially concealed by an oak tree near the park's eastern entrance. Average height, nondescript clothing, the kind of appearance designed not to be remembered. But it was his stillness that gave him away. While everyone else in the park moved naturally, walking, playing, reading, this man remained unnaturally motionless, focused entirely on their bench. Ridge tensed, his hand instinctively moving closer to Lily. The man's eyes met Ridge's for just an instant before sliding away. In that brief moment of eye contact, Ridge recognized something he'd seen countless times before, the calculated gaze of a predator. The man moved away from the tree with deliberate steps. Ridge watched his approach, noting how the stranger's casual smile never reached his eyes. "There you are, sweetheart." The man's voice carried across the park, friendly and relieved. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Beside Ridge, Lily stiffened. Her small fingers clutched the remaining piece of muffin so tightly that crumbs fell onto her lap. She pressed herself against Ridge's side, her body trembling. "Uncle Derek was so worried," the man continued, now just 10 feet away. He wore khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt. Respectable clothes, like someone who might work in an office. His hair was neatly combed, his face clean-shaven. To anyone else, he might have looked like a concerned relative. But Ridge knew better. He'd spent decades reading people, sizing up threats, detecting lies. Everything about this man felt wrong. "I don't think she wants to go with you," Ridge said, his voice low and even. The man's smile faltered for just a second, before returning, wider than before. "Kids, right? We had a little argument this morning about breakfast cereal." He laughed, the sound hollow. "She's been mad at me all day. Come on, Lilypad. Time to go home." Lily shook her head, shrinking further against Ridge. Her breaths came in quick, shallow bursts. "Strange," Ridge said, not moving from the bench. "She seemed scared, not angry, when she asked for my help." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, his pleasant facade cracking. "I appreciate you looking after her, but she's my responsibility." He held out his hand. "Come on, Lily. Your mom is waiting at home." At this, Lily's head snapped up. "No, she's not," she whispered, so quietly Ridge barely heard her. The man took another step forward. "Thanks for your help, mister, but I'll take it from here." His tone hardened, the pretense of friendliness wearing thin. Ridge stood slowly, his full height and breadth becoming apparent. At 6'3", with shoulders like a bull, decades of hard living etched into his face, he cast an imposing figure. His movement placed him squarely between Lily and the stranger. "Funny thing," Ridge said, his voice deceptively calm. "She doesn't seem to know you." The park had grown quieter. The mother with the stroller was watching them now, phone in hand. The teenagers had stopped their skateboarding. "Listen," the man hissed, leaning closer. "This is a family matter. You don't want to get involved." Ridge didn't budge. "She already involved me when she asked for help." The man's pleasant mask slipped completely. "Look at yourself," he spat, eyeing Ridge's leather vest with its patches and insignia. "You think anyone's going to believe you over me? I'm her uncle." "He's lying," Lily said from behind Ridge, her voice small but clear. "I don't have an uncle." The man's face darkened. "Lily," he warned, "don't make this worse. You know what happens when you misbehave." The threat hung in the air, confirming everything Ridge suspected. Whatever this man wanted with Lily, it wasn't good. Ridge had seen enough broken people in his life to recognize the signs of abuse and fear. "You're not taking her," Ridge stated simply, crossing his arms over his chest. The man stepped sideways, trying to see around Ridge to Lily. "This isn't your business. That child is coming with me, one way or another." Ridge shifted, maintaining the barrier between them. "That sounds like a threat." "Take it however you want." The man's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Last chance to walk away. Around them, park visitors had begun to notice the confrontation. Some were moving away quickly, others pulling out phones. The mother with the stroller was speaking urgently into her cell. "I've got nowhere to be," Ridge replied, his stance widening slightly. "And I'm not going anywhere." The man's fingers twitched near his pocket. His eyes darted around, noticing the attention they were drawing. When he looked back at Ridge, the calculation in his gaze had been replaced with something more dangerous: desperation. "You have no idea what you're getting into," he snarled, stepping forward until they were nearly chest to chest. Ridge didn't flinch. "Neither do you." The man's eyes darted once more around the park. The woman with the stroller had moved farther away, phone pressed to her ear. A pair of joggers had slowed to watch. The gathering attention seemed to push him over the edge. "Last mistake you'll ever make," he hissed. His hand plunged into his jacket pocket and emerged with a glint of metal. A switchblade snapped open with a decisive click. The afternoon sun caught its edge, sharp and menacing. Ridge had been in enough fights to recognize the moment before violence erupts, that suspended breath before chaos. He didn't hesitate. "Run, Lily!" he shouted, pushing her behind him as the man lunged forward. The blade sliced through the air where Lily had been standing only seconds before. Ridge blocked the man's arm with his forearm, feeling the sting as the knife caught his leather jacket and bit into flesh beneath. People scattered, screams echoing across the park. A woman yelled, "Someone call the police!" The attacker was surprisingly quick. He pivoted and slashed again, his face contorted with rage. Ridge ducked under the swing and drove his fist into the man's ribs. The impact was solid, but the man barely flinched. "You're dead!" the attacker snarled, circling now. Blood dripped from Ridge's forearm onto the concrete path. Behind them, Lily had taken shelter behind a nearby bench, her eyes wide with terror. Ridge kept himself between her and danger, never letting the attacker move toward her. "She's not yours to take," Ridge growled, his voice steady despite the throbbing in his arm. The man feinted left, then stabbed forward. Ridge twisted away, but not fast enough. The blade sliced across his abdomen, cutting through his shirt. White-hot pain flared across Ridge's midsection. He pressed his hand against the wound, feeling warm wetness spread beneath his fingers. Despite the pain, Ridge saw his opening. As the attacker pulled back to strike again, Ridge surged forward. He grabbed the man's wrist with both hands, using his superior weight and strength to drive the knife hand wide. They crashed into a picnic table, splintering one of the benches. The attacker brought his knee up hard into Ridge's wounded stomach. Stars exploded across Ridge's vision as pain lanced through him. His grip loosened momentarily, and the man wrenched his knife hand free. "Ridge!" Lily's terrified voice cut through the haze of pain. The sound of her fear pushed something deep inside Ridge, something he thought had died years ago. He straightened, despite the agony, a new resolve hardening within him. The attacker lunged again, knife aimed at Ridge's throat. Ridge caught his wrist, but the momentum drove them both backward. They hit the ground hard, Ridge on his back with the attacker above him. The knife trembled between them, inches from Ridge's face, as both men strained against each other's strength. Ridge could feel his blood soaking into the grass beneath him. The wound in his stomach burned like fire, and his strength was beginning to wane. The knife edged closer to his throat. "Should have walked away," the man grunted, his face twisted with effort and hate. From the corner of his eye, Ridge saw Lily peering from behind the bench, tears streaming down her face. Something shifted inside him, a fierce protectiveness he hadn't felt in decades. He would not let this man take her. Not today. Not ever. With a roar that came from somewhere primal within him, Ridge twisted his hips and pushed upward. They rolled, positions reversed. The attacker's eyes widened in surprise as Ridge now loomed above him. The knife clattered to the ground as Ridge pinned the man's arm with his knee. Pain screamed through Ridge's body, but he ignored it, driving his fist into the attacker's face once, twice. The man's head snapped back against the dirt. "Stay down!" Ridge growled, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Instead, the attacker bucked and thrashed. His hand found a large rock on the ground beside them. He swung it hard, catching Ridge on the temple. The world tilted sideways. Ridge felt himself falling, darkness threatening at the edges of his vision. Through a fog, he saw the attacker scrambling for the knife again. "No," Ridge mumbled, forcing himself to his knees despite the spinning world. Blood dripped into his eyes from the new wound on his head. His stomach felt wet and on fire. But when he saw the man advancing toward Lily with the knife, a surge of adrenaline pushed back the darkness. With the last of his strength, Ridge threw himself forward, tackling the attacker from behind. They crashed to the ground once more, Ridge's full weight driving the breath from the man's lungs. Ridge's world had narrowed to a single purpose: keep Lily safe. He pinned the attacker face down with the last of his strength. One knee pressed into the man's back. The knife lay just beyond reach, knocked aside in their desperate struggle. "Stay down," Ridge growled again, his voice barely audible through ragged breaths. Blood soaked through his shirt, dripping onto the grass beneath them. His vision swam, darkness creeping at the edges. The wound in his stomach burned like someone had poured gasoline on it and struck a match. Each breath sent fresh waves of agony through his battered body. The attacker bucked and twisted beneath him. "Get off me, you!" Ridge pressed harder, cutting off the man's words. "Not happening." In the distance, a wailing sound pierced the air. Sirens. Someone had called the police. Ridge felt a flicker of relief through his pain. Help was coming, but could he hold on long enough? "Ridge!" Lily's small voice came from nearby. She stood a few feet away, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes were wide with fear, fixed on the blood spreading across his shirt. "Stay back, honey," Ridge managed, his words slurring slightly. He couldn't let her get close to the danger again. "Police. Coming." The sirens grew louder, but the sound seemed to be coming from underwater. Ridge blinked hard, fighting to stay conscious. The man beneath him sensed Ridge's weakening grip and renewed his struggles. With a violent heave, the attacker nearly dislodged Ridge, who slumped sideways, barely catching himself on one arm. The world tilted dangerously. Through blurred vision, Ridge saw the man scrambling toward the knife again. "No!" Ridge lunged forward, grabbing the man's ankle with bloody fingers. The struggle had drawn a crowd at a safe distance. Someone shouted, "They're coming! Hold on!" Blue lights flashed at the edge of the park now. Car doors slammed. Footsteps pounded on pavement. The attacker kicked out, catching Ridge in the shoulder. Pain exploded through him, but he refused to let go. He pulled himself forward, inch by painful inch, and grabbed the man's other leg. "You're not taking her," Ridge gasped. The man twisted around, fury in his eyes. "You should have minded your own business." He kicked again, this time catching Ridge in his wounded stomach. Ridge's vision went white with pain. He collapsed onto his side, curling around the agony. Through the haze, Ridge heard Lily scream. The sound cut through his fog of pain, like nothing else could. He forced his eyes open to see the attacker on his feet, lunging for the knife once more. "Stop! Police!" A commanding voice rang out across the park. Two uniformed officers sprinted toward them, weapons drawn. The attacker froze for just a second, then grabbed the knife and whirled toward Lily. With strength he didn't know he had left, Ridge surged upward. He caught the man's wrist before the knife could move an inch toward the child. Both men crashed to the ground again, Ridge using his body to shield Lily. "Freeze! Drop the weapon!" The officers were upon them now, guns trained on the attacker. The man finally went still, realizing he was cornered. The knife dropped from his hand as the officers rushed in. one securing the weapon while the other handcuffed him. Ridge rolled onto his back, the last of his strength gone. The blue sky above him seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. Somewhere in the distance, more sirens approached. "Ridge!" Lily's tear-streaked face appeared above him. Small, gentle fingers touched his cheek. "It's okay now," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if the words actually came out. An officer knelt beside him, pressing something against his stomach wound. "Ambulance is almost here, sir. Hang on." Through dimming consciousness, Ridge heard the officers radioing in. "Suspect in custody," one said. "Male, approximately 35, matches the description from the Amber Alert in Fairview County." The other officer's voice was grim. "Dispatch, run his prints against the trafficking ring we've been tracking. I think we just caught our guy." Ridge felt a small hand slip into his. Lily had crept closer, ignoring the officer's attempts to keep her back. "You saved me," she said, her voice small but steady. The last thing Ridge saw before darkness claimed him was Lily's face, and the realization that for the first time in years, he'd done something that mattered. The ambulance jostled as it sped through the streets, sirens wailing. Ridge floated in and out of consciousness, a blur of faces and voices swirling above him. Pain radiated from his stomach in hot waves. The paramedics worked quickly, their hands moving with practiced precision. "BP, dropping to 90/60, a female voice called out. "Push another round of fluids," someone responded. Ridge tried to focus, but his thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. Memories flickered through his mind. The little girl's frightened eyes, the flash of the knife, the feeling of his body giving out. Had he done enough? Was Lily safe now? A mask covered his face, pumping oxygen into his lungs. The sweet, metallic taste of blood lingered in his mouth. Ridge forced his eyes open, blinking against the harsh interior lights of the ambulance. "Sir, can you hear me?" The paramedic leaned closer, checking his pupils with a penlight. "You're on your way to County General. You've lost a lot of blood, but we're doing everything we can." Ridge tried to speak, but only a groan escaped his lips. His tongue felt thick, uncooperative. "Try not to talk," the paramedic advised. "Save your strength." The ambulance hit a pothole, and pain shot through Ridge's body. He grimaced, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Through the haze of agony, his thoughts returned to Lily. Where was she now? Who was looking after her? As if in answer to his unspoken questions, he became aware of voices at the front of the ambulance. The driver was speaking to someone over the radio, the words drifting back to where Ridge lay. "The little girl involved in the park incident," the driver was saying. "What's happening with her?" There was a crackle of static, then a response. "Child Protective Services is on scene now. Officer Ramirez says there's no next of kin they can locate immediately. Looks like emergency foster placement tonight." The words hit Ridge like a physical blow. No family. No one to claim her. The foster system. He'd seen enough in his life to know what that could mean. Good homes sometimes, but also indifference, neglect, or worse. Kids shuffled from place to place, never belonging anywhere. "Poor kid," the driver replied. "At least that trafficking creep didn't get her. They're saying he's connected to cases in 3 counties. Ridge struggled to sit up, ignoring the stabbing pain in his abdomen. "Sir, you need to lie still." The paramedic gently pushed him back down. "You've got a serious wound we're trying to stabilize." "The girl," Ridge managed to rasp out, pulling the oxygen mask aside. "Where?" "Taking her." The paramedic's face softened with understanding. "Are you related to her?" Ridge shook his head weakly. "Saved her." "I know. That was incredibly brave." She adjusted his IV line. "The police told us what you did." "Can't. Foster care." Ridge tried again, his voice barely audible. "Not alone." The second paramedic glanced over. "Sir, there's nothing you can do right now. You need surgery as soon as we arrive." You've got internal bleeding that needs immediate attention." Ridge felt tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. In all his years with the Hells Angels, he'd never cried. Not when he'd been shot. Not when he'd been beaten. Not even when they'd buried his brothers. But now, thinking of that tiny girl facing the world alone, something broke open inside him. "Name," he whispered. "Her name." The paramedics exchanged glances. The woman reached for the radio and pressed the talk button. "Base, this is Unit 17. Patient is asking about the little girl from the incident. Do we have a name?" After a pause, the reply came, "That's Lily Harper. Age 4. No known relatives in the system." "Lily," Ridge repeated, the name feeling important on his lips. Another memory surfaced. His own daughter's face, so many years ago. The pain of that loss, still raw after all this time. The ambulance swerved suddenly, throwing the paramedics off balance for a moment. The vehicle accelerated, and Ridge heard the driver call back. "Traffic's clearing. ETA to hospital 3 minutes." As darkness threatened to overtake him again, Ridge fought to stay conscious. He couldn't let Lily disappear into the system. She had looked at him with such trust, had chosen him out of everyone to ask for help. In that moment, he'd been worthy of something again. "Need to find her," he murmured, his voice fading. "Can't leave her alone." The paramedic replaced his oxygen mask. "Sir, right now, you need to focus on surviving, one step at a time." As the ambulance raced toward the hospital, Ridge clung to a single thought, repeating it like a prayer. Lily Harper would not face the world alone. Not if he had anything to say about it. Not this time. Light filtered through Ridge's eyelids, a harsh glare that made him wince even before he opened his eyes. The steady beep of machines surrounded him, a rhythmic pulse that matched the throbbing in his body. He tried to swallow, but his throat felt like sandpaper. Something was taped to his face, an oxygen tube running beneath his nose. Ridge blinked slowly, trying to make sense of his surroundings. White walls. The antiseptic smell. A hospital room. He attempted to shift his position, and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his abdomen, radiating outward in hot waves that made him gasp. Looking down, he could see thick bandages wrapped around his midsection. An IV dripped clear fluid into his arm. What happened? The question floated through his foggy mind. Memories came back in disjointed flashes. Coffee at the diner, a small hand tugging at his vest, a little girl with frightened eyes, then a man, a knife, blood on the pavement. "Lily," Ridge croaked, his voice barely a whisper. He tried to sit up again, fighting through the pain. The movement sent monitors beeping in alarm. The door to his room swung open, and a nurse hurried in. "Whoa there, Mr. Callahan. You need to stay still." She was middle-aged, with kind eyes, and a no-nonsense manner. She checked his monitors, then gently pressed him back against the pillows. "You've just had major surgery. Those stab wounds did some serious damage to your spleen." "The girl," Ridge managed, his words scratchy and thin. "Where's Lily?" The nurse adjusted his IV drip. "You mean the little girl from yesterday? The one you protected?" Ridge nodded, wincing at the movement. "She's safe," the nurse assured him. "Police officers were talking about it at the nurses' station this morning. That man who attacked you is in custody." Ridge closed his eyes briefly, relief washing over him. But then, another memory surfaced, the conversation he'd overheard in the ambulance. Foster care. No family. "Where is she now?" he asked, forcing the words out, despite his dry throat. The nurse reached for a cup of water on the side table and held it to his lips. Ridge sipped gratefully, the cool liquid soothing his parched mouth. "I'm not sure exactly," she admitted, setting the cup down. "Child services would have handled that part. But don't worry. She's away from that terrible man." Ridge stared up at the ceiling, counting the small holes in the acoustic tiles. Away from the man, yes. But where? With whom? He pictured Lily's small face, her eyes wide with fear when she'd approached him. Something twisted in his chest that had nothing to do with his physical wounds. "Need to know," he insisted. "Please." The nurse studied him, seeming to weigh something in her mind. "You really saved that little girl's life, you know. The doctor who operated on you said your injuries would have been fatal for a child her size." She paused. "You're something of a hero around here today, even with all those tattoos and that leather vest they cut off you." Ridge shook his head slightly. "Not a hero. Just did what anyone would." A small smile crossed the nurse's face. "I've worked in this hospital for 20 years, Mr. Callahan. Trust me when I say not everyone would have done what you did." She checked his vitals again. "I'll see what I can find out about the girl. No promises, though. There are privacy regulations." "Thank you," Ridge whispered. Left alone again, he tried to piece together everything that had happened. The man following Lily, the confrontation, the knife coming out of nowhere. He remembered throwing himself forward, shielding her with his body as the blade struck once, twice, 3 times. The burning pain, the man's face, twisted with rage. Then nothing, until flashes of the ambulance. The clock on the wall showed it was just past 8 in the morning. Had it really only been less than a day since everything happened? It felt like a lifetime ago that he'd been sitting alone outside the diner, watching the world pass by. The door opened again, and the nurse returned. "I spoke with Sandra in the ER. She said the little girl, Lily, was taken into emergency foster care last night. A temporary placement while they sort things out." She hesitated. "That's all I could find out. Emergency foster care. Temporary placement." The words hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. Ridge nodded his thanks, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. "She's safe," the nurse repeated firmly. "That's what matters right now." But as she left the room, Ridge stared at the ceiling again, his heart heavy. Safe for now, maybe. But for how long? And what would happen to Lily tomorrow? Or the day after that? The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds of Ridge's hospital room, casting stripes across the thin blanket covering his legs. The pain medication had dulled the worst of his discomfort, but he still felt every breath pull against his stitches. The television mounted in the corner played silently, some game show he couldn't focus on. A soft knock at the door pulled his attention away from his thoughts. "Mr. Callahan, you have visitors," a nurse announced, poking her head into the room. Ridge struggled to sit up straighter, wincing at the effort. "Visitors." The door opened wider, and a woman in her 60s, with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck, stepped in. Her face was lined but kind, with alert eyes that took in everything at once. "Hello, Mr. Callahan. I'm Martha Green from Child Protective Services." She spoke with a gentle authority. "I hope we're not disturbing you." But Ridge barely heard her words. His focus had dropped to the small figure, half hidden behind Martha's legs. A little girl with blonde hair pulled into slightly crooked pigtails. Lily. She peeked out at him, her eyes wide and uncertain. "No disturbance," Ridge said, his voice still rough. He tried to soften his face, aware of how intimidating he must look with his bruises and tattoos. "Come in." Martha guided Lily into the room, keeping a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lily has been asking about the man who helped her. When the hospital said you were accepting visitors, I thought it might be good for her to see you're okay." Lily stared at Ridge, her eyes traveling over the bandages and tubes. She clutched a folded piece of paper in her small hands. "Hey there," Ridge said softly, in a voice he hadn't used in years, the gentle tone he'd once reserved for his own daughter. Lily didn't respond, but she didn't hide behind Martha either. "Progress," Ridge thought. "The doctors say Mr. Callahan is going to be just fine," Martha told Lily, guiding her closer to the bed. "He was very brave yesterday, wasn't he?" Lily nodded, her pigtails bobbing. "He made the bad man go away," she whispered. Something tightened in Ridge's chest, that had nothing to do with his injuries. "That's right," he said. "He can't hurt you now." "Lily is staying with one of our emergency foster families," Martha explained, pulling a chair closer to the bed for Lily to sit on. "They're very nice people who take care of children until we can find them a permanent home." Ridge nodded, studying the little girl's face. She looked tired, with faint shadows under her eyes. He wondered if she'd slept at all last night, thrust into a strange house with people she didn't know. "How you doing, kiddo?" he asked. Lily looked down at the paper in her hands. After a moment of hesitation, she held it out to him. "I made this," she said quietly. Ridge took it carefully, unfolding the construction paper. It was a drawing done in crayon, a tall figure in black beside a small, yellow-haired figure. Hearts floated around them both. "That's you!" Lily pointed at the tall figure. "And that's me." Ridge stared at the drawing, something breaking open inside him. "It's real good," he managed to say past the tightness in his throat. "Thank you." Martha smiled, watching the interaction. "Lily hasn't spoken much since yesterday, but she was very clear about wanting to see you." Ridge placed the drawing carefully on his bedside table, making sure Lily saw him treating it as something precious. "Mrs. Foster has lots of toys," Lily said suddenly, her voice small. "But I don't know where my bunny is." "Your bunny?" Ridge asked. "Hop Hop," she explained seriously. "He's pink. He sleeps with me." Martha sighed softly. "We don't have many of Lily's belongings, I'm afraid. Her living situation before was complicated." Ridge nodded, understanding the things left unsaid. He looked at Lily again, seeing the worry in her eyes. Worry no 4-year-old should have to carry. "Maybe we can find you a new bunny," he suggested. "One that looks just like Hop Hop." Lily didn't respond, but she inched her chair closer to his bed. Martha watched with raised eyebrows. "Would you like to tell Mr. Callahan about the cartoon you watched this morning?" Martha prompted gently. Lily shook her head. Instead, she reached out hesitantly, her small fingers hovering near Ridge's hand where it rested on the blanket. After a moment's uncertainty, she placed her hand on top of his. Ridge kept perfectly still, afraid to break whatever was happening. Her hand was tiny against his weathered, tattooed one, like a sparrow perched on a rock. Martha's eyes softened as she watched. No one spoke, but in the quiet hospital room, a silent understanding passed between the little girl and the man who had saved her. An unspoken trust, fragile but real. Lily's fingers curled around Ridge's thumb, holding on tight. Morning light streamed through the hospital window, turning the sterile white room into something almost cheerful. Ridge blinked awake slowly, the pain medication making his thoughts fuzzy around the edges. His body ached in places he hadn't even known existed before the fight. Each breath was a careful negotiation with his bruised ribs. A nurse had just finished checking his vitals when he heard small footsteps pattering down the hallway outside his room. A moment later, Martha Green appeared in the doorway, her hand resting gently on Lily's shoulder. "Look who wanted to see you first thing this morning," Martha said with a warm smile. Lily stood in the doorway, clutching another folded piece of paper to her chest. Her hair was neater today, tied back in a single ponytail, and she wore a purple shirt with a butterfly on the front. "Good morning, kiddo," Ridge said, his voice gravelly from sleep. He tried to sit up straighter, wincing at the movement. "Don't hurt yourself," Martha cautioned, guiding Lily into the room. "We can only stay a few minutes. I have to get Lily to her appointment with the counselor soon." Ridge nodded, his eyes fixed on the little girl. She seemed less frightened today, though still cautious as she approached his bed. "I made another picture," Lily announced, her voice small but clear. She held out the folded paper with both hands. "For me?" Ridge asked, something warm spreading through his chest. Lily nodded, watching intently as Ridge carefully unfolded the drawing. This one showed what looked like a hospital bed with a stick figure lying in it. Beside the bed stood a small figure with yellow hair. Colorful flowers filled the rest of the page. "That's you in the hospital," Lily explained, pointing at the bed. "And that's me visiting you. I put flowers, because flowers make people happy when they're sick." Ridge swallowed hard. "This is real nice, Lily. Thank you." He looked up at Martha. "She's quite the artist." Martha nodded. "She's been drawing non-stop since yesterday. The foster mom said she stayed up late working on this one especially for you." Lily moved closer to the bed, studying the tubes and monitors around Ridge with curious eyes. "Does it hurt a lot?" she asked suddenly. Ridge hesitated, unsure how to answer. "A bit," he admitted. "But the doctors are giving me medicine to help." "I got hurt once," Lily confided, touching her elbow. "I fell down and got a big scratch. It was bleeding." "That sounds pretty bad," Ridge said seriously. "I cried," Lily continued, "but then I got a Band-Aid with princesses on it." "Princess Band-Aids have special healing powers," Ridge said solemnly. A tiny smile flickered across Lily's face, the first he'd seen. It transformed her entire countenance, brightening her eyes and softening the worried set of her small shoulders. "Do you want to see my other drawings?" she asked, suddenly animated. She looked up at Martha. "Can I show him?" Martha checked her watch. "Just for a minute, honey. We need to leave soon." Lily plopped down on the chair beside Ridge's bed and pulled a few crumpled papers from the small backpack Martha carried. She spread them across the edge of his blanket, explaining each one with growing enthusiasm. "This is a dog I saw yesterday, and this is the house where I'm staying now. It has a swing in the backyard. And this is a rainbow because I like rainbows." Ridge looked at each drawing carefully, asking questions and nodding at Lily's explanations. With each moment, the little girl seemed to relax more in his presence, her voice growing steadier. Martha watched them with thoughtful eyes. "Lily," she said gently after a few minutes, "we need to go now, but maybe we can visit Mr. Callahan again tomorrow." Lily's face fell. "Do we have to go?" "I'm afraid so. Mr. Callahan needs to rest, and you have your appointment." Lily looked up at Ridge, her eyes suddenly anxious again. "Will you still be here tomorrow?" The question hit Ridge like a physical blow. The fear behind it was unmistakable. This child had already experienced too much uncertainty, too many people disappearing from her life. "I'll be right here," Ridge promised softly. "Not going anywhere." Lily nodded, gathering her drawings except for the new one she'd brought him. "That one's for your wall," she said, pointing to it, "so you won't be lonely." As Martha guided Lily toward the door, the little girl suddenly turned back. "Bye, Mr. Ridge," she called, giving a small wave. "See you tomorrow, Lily," Ridge replied, watching her go. When the door closed behind them, Ridge carefully picked up the drawing Lily had left. His rough, scarred fingers traced the colorful flowers surrounding the stick figures. For the first time in years, a genuine smile, small but real, softened the hard lines of his face. The connection forming between him and this small, brave girl was something he hadn't felt in so long. He'd almost forgotten what it was like. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Ridge's hospital room as he dozed fitfully. The pain medication made him drift in and out of sleep, never quite comfortable enough to rest deeply. A soft knock on the door roused him. "Mr. Callahan? May I come in?" It was Martha Green, this time without Lily. Ridge adjusted his position, wincing slightly. "Sure." Martha entered, carrying a worn leather briefcase. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore simple clothes that spoke of practicality rather than fashion. She pulled up a chair beside his bed. "I thought we should talk," she said, setting her briefcase on her lap. "Properly, I mean, about Lily." Ridge nodded, grateful for the direct approach. "How is she doing?" "As well as can be expected, considering everything she's been through." Martha's eyes were kind, but evaluating. "I'm Martha Green, by the way. I've been a social worker with Child Protective Services for almost 30 years. "Jack Callahan," Ridge replied, extending his hand with effort, though most folks just call me Ridge. Martha shook his hand firmly. I want to thank you for what you did, Mr. Callahan. Not many people would have put themselves at risk like that for a child they didn't know. Ridge looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true, Martha said quietly. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a file. I thought you might want to know more about Lily's situation, since she's formed such a quick attachment to you. Ridge's attention sharpened. The cop said something about her not having a place to go. Martha nodded, her expression growing somber. Lily Harper is 4 years old. Her mother, Angela Harper, died of an overdose 8 months ago. There was never any father listed on her birth certificate. Ridge's jaw tightened. And that man who went after her? No relation whatsoever, Martha confirmed. His name is Raymond Wells. He's part of a trafficking operation the police have been trying to shut down for months. We believe he targeted Lily because she was vulnerable. She was staying with her mother's cousin. But that woman has her own substance abuse issues and often left Lily alone. Ridge closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this information. When he opened them again, Martha was watching him closely. After her mother died, Martha continued, Lily bounced between relatives who couldn't or wouldn't provide proper care. The cousin was supposed to be temporary, while we located more suitable family members, but, she sighed, there simply aren't any. No grandparents, no stable aunts or uncles. Everyone we've contacted either has their own legal troubles or has refused to take her in. So she's all alone, Ridge said, his voice rough with emotion. Currently, she's in emergency foster care with a family that works with us frequently. They're good people, but it's a temporary placement. Martha adjusted her glasses. Lily will likely enter the formal foster care system next week, once all the paperwork is processed. Ridge stared at the ceiling for a long moment. The thought of Lily, with her solemn eyes and careful drawings, being passed from home to home, made something twist painfully in his chest. What happens to her then? He asked. Best case scenario, she gets placed with a family looking to adopt, and they fall in love with her. Martha's tone made it clear this wasn't the most common outcome. More likely, she'll move between foster homes until a permanent placement is found, which could take months or even years. Ridge's hand tightened on the bedrail. That's a hell of a way for a kid to grow up. It is, Martha agreed simply. She studied him for a moment. You know, it's remarkable how she's responded to you. The foster mom says you're all she talks about. My hero, she calls you. Ridge felt his throat constrict. I'm no hero. To her, you are. Martha closed the file and returned it to her briefcase. Children Lily's age who've experienced trauma often develop trust issues. Yet somehow, she knew immediately that you were safe. That's unusual. Ridge thought about Lily's small hand clutching his, the way she'd looked at him without fear despite his appearance, his reputation. What happens now? He asked. With her case. There will be hearings, evaluations, placement meetings. Martha stood, gathering her belongings. The system moves slowly, I'm afraid. In the meantime, if you're willing, I think your continued presence would be good for her. Stability is what she needs most right now. Familiar faces, reliable connections. Ridge nodded, his concern hardening into something deeper, more protective. I'm not going anywhere. He meant it in more ways than one. Martha smiled gently, recognizing the change in his expression. I thought you might say that. We'll talk more tomorrow, Mr. Callahan. Get some rest. As she left, Ridge stared at Lily's drawing on the bedside table. A child with no family, no anchor in the world. The knowledge settled in him like a weight, but also like a purpose, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. The hospital quieted as night fell. Nurses spoke in hushed tones as they made their rounds, and the fluorescent lights hummed steadily overhead. Ridge lay awake, his body aching, but his mind racing even faster. Martha's words about Lily's situation had stirred up memories he'd spent years trying to bury. He shifted uncomfortably in the hospital bed, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. The doctor had told him he was lucky. The knife had missed his vital organs by centimeters. But lucky wasn't a word Ridge had associated with himself for a long time. As the night deepened, the sounds of the hospital faded into the background. In the darkness, Ridge's mind traveled back 15 years to another hospital room, one where the machines had fallen silent, one where he'd held a small, lifeless hand. "Emma," he whispered to the empty room. His daughter had been 6 years old, just 2 years older than Lily. She'd had the same trusting eyes, the same quiet determination. Emma had been his whole world, the reason he got up in the morning, the reason he'd left his wild days behind. At least, that's what he'd thought at the time. Ridge closed his eyes, but it only made the memories sharper. Emma climbing onto his motorcycle, begging for a ride around the block. Him thinking it would be okay, just this once. The car that hadn't seen them at the intersection. The horrifying moment of impact. He had survived. Emma hadn't. Ridge's jaw clenched as the familiar wave of guilt washed over him. The doctors had told him it wasn't his fault, that no parent could predict every danger. But he knew better. He'd put his daughter on that bike. He'd made that choice. After Emma died, Ridge's marriage had crumbled. His wife couldn't bear to look at him, and truthfully, he couldn't blame her. He couldn't stand to look at himself either. That's when he'd fallen back into his old life, joining the Hell's Angels, embracing the chaos and danger as a form of punishment. He didn't deserve safety or comfort, not after what he'd done. For 15 years he'd lived with that guilt eating away at him, never allowing himself to get close to anyone, especially not children, until today. Until Lily. Ridge's eyes found her crayon drawing on the bedside table, barely visible in the dim light. A simple picture. A small stick figure holding hands with a much larger one. Me and Ridge, written in wobbly letters. Something broke open inside him. A dam that had held back everything he'd refused to feel since Emma died. Ridge turned his face toward the wall as tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered, not sure if he was speaking to Emma or to Lily. Maybe both. Ridge thought about what Martha had told him, how Lily would enter the foster system, bounced from home to home with no guarantee of stability or love. The thought of her growing up that way, feeling unwanted and alone, made his chest ache worse than his injuries. He remembered Emma's favorite bedtime story, about a knight who protected those who couldn't protect themselves. "That's you, Daddy," she would say, pointing at the knight. "You keep the bad guys away." Some knight he'd turned out to be. He couldn't even protect his own daughter. But maybe he could protect Lily. Ridge wiped his face with his hand. For the first time in 15 years, he allowed himself to consider a future beyond just surviving day to day. He thought about what it would mean to be responsible for a child again, to open himself up to that kind of love and fear. The idea terrified him, but the alternative, Lily alone in the system, passed from stranger to stranger, that was unbearable. "Not gonna happen, kid," Ridge murmured, looking at her drawing. "Not if I have anything to say about it." He didn't know exactly what he was going to do, or how he could possibly convince anyone that a scarred, middle-aged biker with a troubled past would be good for Lily. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wouldn't let her face the world alone, the way he had after Emma died, the way Emma had in those final moments when he couldn't save her. Ridge made a silent promise to both girls as the night deepened around him. This time, he would get it right. This time, he would be the protector Emma had always believed him to be. The morning sunlight streamed through the thin hospital curtains, casting a warm glow across Ridge's room. He'd barely slept, his mind filled with memories and new possibilities. When a soft knock came at the door around 10, Ridge wasn't surprised to see Martha guiding Lily into the room. "Someone was very insistent about visiting you today," Martha said with a gentle smile. "I've got paperwork to handle downstairs. Would it be all right if Lily stays with you for a bit?" Ridge nodded, his throat suddenly tight. "Yeah, that'd be fine." Lily was clutching a small backpack to her chest. As soon as Martha left, she approached the bed cautiously. "Does it hurt bad?" she asked, her eyes wide as she looked at the bandages visible beneath his hospital gown. Ridge tried to soften his naturally gruff voice. "Not so much today, kid." It wasn't entirely true. His side throbbed with each breath. But he didn't want to scare her. Lily climbed carefully onto the chair next to his bed. "I brought something," she announced, unzipping her backpack. She pulled out a worn stuffed rabbit, its fur patchy in places from years of love. "This is Mr. Hoppy. He makes me feel better when I'm scared or hurt." She held the rabbit out to him with complete seriousness. Ridge stared at the offering, momentarily frozen. The simple gesture of kindness, this child wanting to comfort him, hit him harder than any punch ever had. "That's real nice of you," he said finally, accepting Mr. Hoppy with gentle hands. "But won't you miss him?" Lily shook her head firmly. "He can stay with you until you're all better. Then I can have him back." "That sounds like a fair deal," Ridge said, placing the rabbit carefully on his pillow. Lily beamed at him, then dug into her backpack again. "I brought my coloring book too. Do you like to color?" Ridge couldn't remember the last time he'd held a crayon. "Been a while," he admitted. "That's okay. I can show you," Lily said confidently, pulling out a battered coloring book and a plastic bag of broken crayons. She hopped down from the chair and carefully climbed onto the foot of his bed, mindful of his injured leg. For the next hour, they colored together. Lily chattered happily about which colors worked best for princesses and which for dragons. Ridge found himself smiling at her serious debates about whether a horse should be brown or purple. "When I was little, I had a horse coloring book," Ridge found himself saying. "I always made them crazy colors, blue with green spots, that sort of thing." "Really?" Lily looked delighted. "I want to see. Can we do that?" Ridge nodded, and soon they were creating the most outlandish horse the coloring book had ever seen. Orange with pink polka dots and a rainbow mane. "My mommy used to read me horse stories," Lily said suddenly, her crayon pausing. "Before she got sick." Ridge felt his heart squeeze. "Yeah, what kind of stories?" Lily's face brightened. "About a magic horse that could fly, and one about a girl who saved all the wild horses from bad guys." "Those sound like good stories," Ridge said. He hesitated, then added, "My daughter liked horse stories too." Lily looked up, surprised. "You have a daughter?" Ridge swallowed hard. "I did. Her name was Emma." "Where is she now?" Lily asked. Ridge looked down at the colorful page between them. "She went to heaven, a long time ago." Lily considered this, with the straightforward acceptance only a child can manage. "My mommy's in heaven too," she said. Then, after a thoughtful pause, "Maybe they're friends." Ridge had to blink rapidly to clear his vision. "Maybe they are, kid. I bet Emma would have liked that." After a moment, Lily asked, "Can you tell me a story about Emma?" Ridge found, to his surprise, that he could. For the first time in 15 years, he spoke about his daughter without the weight of guilt crushing his chest. He told Lily about how Emma had loved butterflies and thunderstorms, and how she could do a perfect cartwheel by the time she was 5. As he spoke, Ridge felt something shift inside him. The memories of Emma, so long associated only with pain, began to warm him from the inside. Sharing them with Lily somehow made them easier to bear. When a nurse brought lunch, they ate together, Ridge helping Lily open her milk carton. He found himself telling her silly jokes that made her giggle, the sound like music in the sterile hospital room. By mid-afternoon, when Martha returned, Ridge realized something. For hours, he hadn't thought about his injuries or his grim past. Instead, he'd been fully present, focused on making Lily smile. As Martha prepared to take Lily for the evening, the little girl carefully tucked Mr. Hoppy back beside Ridge's pillow. "Don't forget, he needs a good night hug," she instructed seriously. "I won't forget," Ridge promised. After they left, Ridge sat in the quiet room, looking at the cheerful drawings they'd created together. For the first time in years, he felt something like hope stirring in his chest. Not just the determination of the night before, but something warmer, a sense of purpose that went beyond protection. The hospital room grew dim as evening approached. Ridge had spent the hours after Lily left, looking at the colorful pages they'd created together. Mr. Hoppy sat propped against his pillow, a silent reminder of the little girl's trust. When Martha returned around 7, Ridge was sitting up straighter, despite the pain it caused. She carried a folder tucked under her arm and offered him a gentle smile. "How are you feeling?" she asked, settling into the chair beside his bed. "Been worse," Ridge said, shifting slightly. "How's Lily doing?" Martha's eyes softened. "She's at a temporary foster home. Nice couple, very experienced. She asked about you 3 times before bedtime." Ridge nodded, his weathered face betraying little emotion, though Martha noticed his hand tightening on the bedrail. "She's a special kid," he said finally. "Yes, she is." Martha set her folder on her lap. "I've been working in social services for over 30 years, and children like Lily, they have a way of seeing people that most adults have forgotten." The room fell quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors. Outside the window, streetlights flickered on one by one. "What happens to her now?" Ridge asked, breaking the silence. His voice was low but direct. Martha sighed. "We'll try to find her a permanent placement. The system is overloaded, as always. She'll likely move between foster homes until we can find something stable." Ridge stared at the worn stuffed rabbit. "That's not right," he said simply. "No, it isn't." Martha's response held the weariness of someone who had fought this battle too many times. "But it's the reality we're working with." Ridge's jaw tightened. He looked up, meeting Martha's eyes with an intensity that might have intimidated someone who didn't know better. "What would it take?" he asked. "To help her long term, I mean." Martha studied him carefully. "That depends on what you're asking, Mr. Callahan." "Ridge," he corrected automatically. "Ridge," she acknowledged with a nod. "Are you talking about financial support? Because there are programs." "No," he interrupted. "I'm talking about giving her a home." Martha's eyebrows rose slightly, but to her credit, she didn't immediately dismiss the idea. "That's a significant commitment," she said carefully. "There are multiple steps involved in becoming a foster parent, let alone adopting." Ridge shifted again, wincing as pain shot through his side. "I've got time," he said dryly, gesturing to his hospital bed. Martha opened her folder and pulled out some papers. Becoming a guardian would require background checks, home inspections, parenting classes, character references. It's not a quick process. "I figured that," Ridge said. "And I know what you're thinking. Guy like me doesn't stand a chance." "I didn't say that," Martha replied evenly. "Don't need to. Got a record. Bad neighborhood. Motorcycle club." Ridge listed off each strike against him without flinching. "But here's what I do have. A steady income from my motorcycle repair shop, my own house that's paid off, and I've been sober for 8 years." Martha looked surprised at this last revelation. Ridge continued, his voice growing more certain with each word. "I know what it's like to lose everything, to feel like nobody in the world cares if you live or die. I don't want that for Lily." He reached for the water cup on his side table, took a sip, and set it down carefully. "She deserves better than bouncing from house to house. wondering when the next goodbye is coming. Martha watched him, her professional reserve softening. "Why are you doing this, Ridge? You barely know her." Ridge was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its usual gruffness. "Because she trusted me when she had no reason to. Because she offered me her stuffed rabbit when I was hurting." He paused. "And because I couldn't save Emma, but maybe I can help Lily." The admission hung in the air between them. "I want to be her guardian," Ridge said finally, the words both a declaration and a question. "Whatever it takes, I'll do it. Just tell me where to start." Martha sat back in her chair, clearly taken aback by his determination. "Well," she said, "I certainly wasn't expecting this when I came in tonight." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the thin hospital curtains, casting patterns across Ridge's bed. His body ached less today, though the doctors had warned him recovery would be slow. He'd been up since dawn, turning over the conversation with Martha in his mind, mentally preparing for what lay ahead. When Martha arrived just after 10, she carried a thicker folder than before and a concerned expression. She settled into the visitor's chair with a businesslike efficiency. "I've brought some information," she said, opening the folder. "I want to be completely honest with you about what you're considering." Ridge nodded. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Martha spread several documents on the rolling table. The process to become Lily's guardian will be challenging. The courts prioritize family reunification when possible, though in Lily's case, there isn't family to reunite with. Then they look for stable, conventional homes. She paused, meeting his eyes directly. "Your background will raise flags, Ridge. Your association with the motorcycle club, your past record, even if the charges were minor and years ago, will be scrutinized. The judge will question whether you can provide the right environment for a 4-year-old girl." Ridge's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "I figured as much." "There's more," Martha continued. "Character references will be critical. Do you have people who can vouch for you? Professional contacts? Neighbors? People who know you beyond your club?" Ridge thought about it. "My customers at the shop. The landlady who lives next door. Maybe the diner owner where I get breakfast." "That's a start." Martha nodded. "You'll also need to complete parenting classes, financial stability assessments, and multiple home studies." She pulled out another form. "And there's the matter of Lily's trauma. She'll need therapy, consistent routines, and specialized care. Are you prepared for that level of commitment?" Ridge looked down at his hands. Rough, calloused hands that had fixed motorcycles and thrown punches but had never tucked in a child or wiped away tears. "I don't know everything about raising kids," he admitted, "but I can learn. And I know about nightmares and being scared. I know about needing someone who won't give up when things get hard." Martha watched him thoughtfully. "The court will assign a guardian ad litem, someone to represent Lily's interests. That person will interview you extensively. They'll want to know why a man with no connection to this child suddenly wants custody." Ridge's eyes hardened. "No connection? I bled for her. That counts for something." "To me, yes," Martha said gently. "But to the system, it may look impulsive or suspicious. They'll wonder about your motivations." "Let them wonder," Ridge said. "I'll answer their questions." Martha sighed, removing her glasses and rubbing the bridge of her nose. "There's one more thing you should know. Some people will actively oppose this arrangement. The prosecutor handling the trafficking case may have concerns. Other potential foster families might question why a single man with your background should be considered. It could get ugly, Ridge." The hospital room fell quiet, except for the distant sounds of the nurse's station. Ridge stared out the window for a long moment, watching birds perch on the branch of a nearby tree. "When Emma died," he said finally, his voice low, "I thought that was it for me. No second chances. No doing better. Just punishment for not being there when she needed me. He turned back to Martha, his eyes clear and determined. But when that little girl grabbed my vest and asked for help, something changed. I don't know if I deserve another chance, but Lily deserves someone who will fight for her, no matter what. He pointed to the papers on the table. So I don't care how hard it is, or who stands in the way. I'm going to try. Where do I sign? Martha's expression softened as she handed him a pen. This is just the beginning paperwork to start the process, but I want you to understand. This won't be quick or easy. Ridge took the pen, his hand steady. Nothing worth doing ever is. Ridge adjusted his tie for the 10th time, the unfamiliar tightness making him feel like he was choking. His dress shirt, purchased yesterday from the only department store in town, felt stiff and foreign against his skin. The leather vest and jeans that had defined him for decades hung in his closet, replaced today by the closest thing to respectability he could manage, a dark blue suit that Martha had helped him select. "Stop fidgeting," Martha whispered as they sat on the wooden bench outside the courtroom. "You look fine." Ridge's hands fell to his lap. The hallway's fluorescent lights seemed too bright, making his head pound. He'd been released from the hospital just 3 days ago, his body still bearing the marks of the fight. A healing cut ran along his cheekbone, and beneath his shirt, bandages wrapped his torso where the knife had caught him. "What if they only see the scars?" he asked quietly. Martha understood he wasn't talking about the fresh wounds. "Then we make them see beyond them." The courtroom doors opened, and a clerk called Ridge's name. Martha stood, gathering her files. "Remember what we practiced. Honest, respectful, and focused on Lily." Ridge nodded, taking a deep breath as he rose to his feet. His ribs protested the movement, but he straightened his shoulders anyway. As they walked toward the courtroom, he spotted Lily sitting with a temporary caseworker at the end of the hall. She waved shyly, and Ridge felt his nerves steady. The courtroom was smaller than he'd imagined, with wood-paneled walls and flags flanking a raised bench. Judge Eleanor Winters, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, peered over reading glasses as Ridge took his place at the table. "This is an unusual case," Judge Winters began, reviewing the file before her. "Mr. Callahan, you're petitioning for temporary guardianship of Lily Harper, a child you met under extraordinary circumstances just 2 weeks ago." "Yes, Your Honor," Ridge replied, his deep voice carrying across the quiet room. The judge studied him. "I see the prosecutor has concerns, as does the Department of Children's Services." The county prosecutor, a young man in a crisp suit, stood. "Your Honor, while Mr. Callahan's actions were heroic, his background raises significant questions about his suitability as a guardian, his association with a known motorcycle club, his lack of childcare experience, and the nature of his employment all suggest this arrangement would not be in the child's best interest." Ridge clenched his jaw, but remained silent, remembering Martha's coaching. "Ms. Green," the judge turned to Martha, "you're supporting this petition despite these concerns?" Martha rose confidently. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Callahan has undergone thorough background checks revealing no serious criminal history. He owns his home outright, maintains steady employment as the proprietor of a motorcycle repair shop, and has committed to completing all required parenting classes." She handed forward a folder. "I've included character references from business associates, neighbors, and community members who attest to Mr. Callahan's reliability and integrity." The judge reviewed the documents, while the prosecutor argued further about Ridge's lifestyle and associations. Throughout it all, Ridge kept his eyes forward, his expression steady, though Martha could see the tension in his shoulders. Finally, Judge Winters looked directly at Ridge. "Mr. Callahan, why should I place this child in your care when there are experienced foster families available?" The courtroom fell silent. Ridge cleared his throat, finding the words he'd rehearsed with Martha. "Your Honor, I can't claim to know everything about raising a child, but I know what it means to be alone and afraid. I know what it means to need someone who won't give up on you." He paused, his voice growing stronger. "Lily trusted me when she had no reason to. I won't betray that trust. I have a stable home, a business that lets me set my own hours, and the determination to learn whatever I need to. I'm not perfect, but I will protect her with everything I have." The judge considered him for a long moment. "And your association with the motorcycle club?" Ridge met her gaze directly. "That part of my life is behind me. I've maintained the friendships, but I left active membership years ago. My priority now is giving Lily the safety and stability she deserves." After further questioning and testimony from the guardian ad litem, the judge made her decision. "Given the unusual circumstances and the clear bond that has formed, I'm granting temporary guardianship to Mr. Callahan for a probationary period of 90 days, with weekly supervision by Ms. Green. This arrangement will be reassessed at the end of that period." She fixed Ridge with a stern look. "Mr. Callahan, I'm placing extraordinary trust in you. Don't make me regret it." "I won't, Your Honor. Thank you." Minutes later, Ridge stood in the hallway, still processing what had happened. When Lily was brought to him, she ran forward and wrapped her small arms around his leg. Ridge knelt carefully, wincing at the pain in his side, and looked into her hopeful face. "Does this mean I can stay with you?" she asked. Ridge nodded, his voice suddenly thick. "For now, kid. For now." He stood and held out his hand. Lily's tiny fingers wrapped around his, and together they walked toward the courthouse doors, Martha following with a quiet smile. The old pickup truck rumbled down the quiet street as dusk settled over the small town. Ridge glanced in the rear-view mirror at Lily, who sat in the booster seat Martha had helped install. Her eyes were wide, taking in everything as they drove. "Almost there," Ridge said, his voice softer than usual. The truck turned onto Maple Street, lined with modest homes set back from the road. Most had well-kept yards, with the exception of Ridge's place at the end of the block, a small blue house with a wraparound porch and a yard that needed attention. Ridge pulled into the driveway and cut the engine. For a moment, he just sat there, hands still on the wheel. This morning, he had left for court alone. Now he was returning with a child, a responsibility he hadn't had in 15 years. He opened his door and carefully helped Lily out of her seat. She clutched the small backpack containing her few belongings, clothes, a stuffed rabbit with one ear, and a coloring book Martha had given her. "This is it," Ridge said, watching her face for a reaction. "It's not much, but it's home." Lily looked up at the house, then at Ridge. "Is it our home now?" Something tightened in Ridge's chest. "Yeah, kid. It's our home now." He unlocked the front door and flipped on the lights. The living room was simple but clean. Ridge had spent yesterday scrubbing every surface and clearing away years of accumulated clutter. A worn leather couch faced an old television. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with motorcycle repair manuals and paperbacks. "Let me show you around," Ridge said, suddenly aware of how inadequate it all seemed. They walked through the small house, the kitchen with its dated appliances, the bathroom he'd bleached twice, and finally, the spare room he'd prepared for Lily. It had been his office once, then a storage room. Now, with Martha's help, it held a twin bed with fresh sheets, a small dresser, and a nightstand with a lamp shaped like a cloud. "This is your room," Ridge said, standing in the doorway. "We can change things if you don't like it." Lily stepped inside slowly, her eyes moving from the bed to the window with its new curtains. "Is it really mine?" "All yours," Ridge confirmed. She walked to the bed and carefully placed her backpack on it, then looked up at Ridge with uncertainty in her eyes. "Are you hungry?" he asked, grateful for the practical question. She nodded. "Let's see what we've got." Ridge led the way to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator Martha had helped him stock that morning. "How about grilled cheese?" "I like grilled cheese," Lily said, climbing onto one of the kitchen chairs. Ridge moved around the kitchen, finding a pan and butter, slicing cheese with hands more accustomed to working with engine parts than preparing food for a child. He worked in silence, aware of Lily watching his every move. When he set the sandwich in front of her, cut diagonally the way Martha had suggested, Lily smiled for the first time since they'd left the courthouse. "Thank you," she said politely. They ate quietly, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. Ridge searched for something to say, something normal, something a regular guardian would ask. "So," he began, "what kind of things do you like to do?" Lily thought for a moment, chewing carefully. "I like coloring and stories." Ridge nodded. "We can do that." After dinner, Ridge helped Lily unpack her few belongings, hanging clothes in the closet and placing her stuffed rabbit on the pillow. She stood in the middle of the room, looking small against the bare walls. "We'll get more stuff," Ridge promised. "Make it feel more like yours." When bedtime came, Ridge felt out of his depth again. Martha had written down a routine: bath, pajamas, teeth, story, and he followed it step by step, like following a repair manual for an unfamiliar engine. Lily sat in bed, her hair still damp from the bath, wearing new pajamas Martha had purchased. Ridge perched awkwardly on the edge of the bed, holding a children's book he 500 found at the store. "You want me to read this?" he asked. Lily nodded, clutching her rabbit closer. Ridge opened the book, his rough voice stumbling over the simple words about a bear who couldn't sleep. Halfway through, he noticed Lily's eyelids drooping. By the final page, she was fighting to stay awake. "Time for sleep, kid," he said, closing the book. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. Ridge tucked the blanket around her shoulders. "I'll be right down the hall all night. And I'll be here when you wake up. Promise." Lily seemed satisfied with this answer. She clutched her rabbit tighter and closed her eyes. Ridge stood watching as her breathing deepened and evened out, marveling at the trust this child had placed in him. He turned on the small nightlight plugged into the wall and quietly left the room, leaving the door cracked open. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the weight of the day and what lay ahead. Their new life had begun. Ridge woke with a start, the unfamiliar sound of small feet padding down the hallway, pulling him from sleep. For a moment, he stared at the ceiling, disoriented. Then, yesterday's events rushed back. The courthouse, the judge, Lily's small hand in his as they walked out together. He sat up quickly, wincing at the pain in his still healing ribs. The digital clock read 6:42 a.m. Through his bedroom doorway, he caught a glimpse of Lily as she wandered past, her stuffed rabbit trailing from one hand. "Lily!" he called softly. She appeared in his doorway, hair mussed from sleep, looking uncertain. "I woke up," she said simply. "I see that." Ridge ran a hand through his hair. "You hungry?" Lily nodded, clutching her rabbit closer. "Give me a minute." Ridge grabbed a t-shirt from the dresser and pulled it on. The list Martha had given him was on the nightstand. He glanced at it. Breakfast, getting dressed, brushing teeth. Simple things that suddenly seemed complicated when responsible for a 4-year-old. In the kitchen, Ridge stared into the refrigerator, trying to remember what kids ate for breakfast. Eggs seemed safe. He pulled them out along with butter and milk. "You like scrambled eggs?" he asked. "With ketchup," Lily answered, climbing onto a chair at the kitchen table. Ridge nodded. "Ketchup it is." He cracked eggs into a bowl, aware of Lily watching his every move. His large hands felt clumsy with the small task. "Do you want to help stir?" he asked, surprising himself with the offer. Lily's face brightened. She slid off the chair and came to stand beside him. Ridge found a second bowl and cracked an egg into it. "Here you go." He handed her a fork. "Just Mix it up real good. Lily stabbed at the egg with determination, her tongue poking out in concentration. More egg landed on the counter than stayed in the bowl, but Ridge didn't correct her. "Good job, kid," he said when she finished. "Now we'll cook 'em." Ridge combined their eggs and poured the mixture into a pan. Soon, the kitchen filled with the smell of breakfast. He dished the eggs onto 2 plates, adding a generous squirt of ketchup to Lily's portion. "Thank you," she said politely as he set her plate down. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Ridge consulted Martha's list again. "After breakfast, we need to get you dressed," he said. "Then teeth brushing." Lily nodded seriously, as if these were important missions. After breakfast, Ridge stood awkwardly in the doorway of Lily's room as she pulled clothes from the dresser. "You need help?" he asked. "I can do it," she said proudly. "I'm 4. Ridge nodded. "Right. I'll be right outside if you need me." He waited in the hallway, feeling useless until her voice called out, "I'm done." She emerged wearing a purple shirt, backwards, and mismatched socks. Ridge hesitated, unsure if he should correct her. "Your shirt's on backwards," he finally said gently. Lily looked down. "Oh, no big deal. Just turn it around." She disappeared back into her room, emerging moments later with the shirt properly arranged. "Better?" she asked. "Perfect," Ridge confirmed. The bathroom presented new challenges. The sink was too high, so Ridge found an old milk crate in the garage and flipped it upside down for her to stand on. He squeezed a small amount of toothpaste onto her brush. "You know how to do this part?" he asked. Lily nodded and began brushing enthusiastically, if not thoroughly. Ridge watched, leaning against the doorframe, struck by how quickly routines were forming between them. When she finished, he handed her a cup of water to rinse. "What now?" Lily asked, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Ridge checked the list. "Well, Martha wrote down some stuff we need to get. Want to go to the store with me?" "Can I bring Floppy?" she asked, holding up the one-eared rabbit. "Sure. Floppy's welcome." As they walked toward the front door, Lily suddenly stopped and looked up at him. "Wait," she said. "You didn't brush your teeth." Ridge raised his eyebrows. "You checking up on me, kid?" She nodded solemnly. "You have to brush too. It's the rules." Ridge couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. "You're right. Can't break the rules." He turned back toward the bathroom, Lily following close behind. She handed him his toothbrush with a serious expression, watching to make sure he did it right. When he finished, she broke into a wide smile that reached her eyes for the first time since they'd met. "Now we can go," she declared, slipping her small hand into his large, calloused one. The simple gesture of trust made Ridge's chest tighten. For just a moment, in this ordinary morning ritual, they weren't a biker with a troubled past and an orphan child. They were simply 2 people figuring things out together, finding their way. Over the next few days, Ridge and Lily found their way into an unexpected rhythm together. Each morning brought small victories and quiet moments that began to heal something in both of them. On Wednesday morning, Ridge woke to find Lily already dressed, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with a picture book Martha had brought over. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. "I did my teeth already," she announced proudly. Ridge nodded, impressed. "Good job, kid." He made them oatmeal with sliced bananas for breakfast. They ate together at the small kitchen table, Lily swinging her legs as she told him about the animals in her book. Ridge listened, surprised by how much he enjoyed her chatter. Later that afternoon, Ridge took Lily to the small playground 2 blocks from their house. He sat on a bench, muscles tense, scanning for any signs of danger as she climbed the jungle gym. When she called for him to watch her slide, he gave her a thumbs up, his face softening at her delight. "Again!" she shouted, racing back to the ladder. "I'm watching," he assured her. On Thursday, Ridge found himself facing the challenge of laundry. He stared at the pile of small clothes, unsure how to proceed. "These get washed separate?" he asked, holding up one of Lily's pink shirts. Lily shrugged. "I don't know." Ridge sighed and tossed everything in together, hoping for the best. When the clothes came out with no disasters, he felt an absurd sense of accomplishment. That evening, they sat on the front porch steps. Ridge showed Lily how to identify different birds that visited the yard. His knowledge surprised her. "How do you know so much about birds?" she asked. Ridge was quiet for a moment. "My dad taught me when I was little, before things got bad." "Can you teach me too?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with interest. "Sure thing," he said, his voice rough with unexpected emotion. By Friday, they had established a bedtime routine. Ridge would sit on the edge of Lily's bed while she picked out a story for him to read. His deep voice stumbled over the words sometimes, but Lily never seemed to mind. "One more?" she would ask each night. "Just one," he would answer, already reaching for another book. On Saturday morning, they made pancakes together. Ridge mixed the batter while Lily stood on her milk crate beside him, carefully adding blueberries. "Not all at once," Ridge cautioned as she dumped in a handful. The first pancake burned black on one side. Ridge flipped it onto a plate with a grimace. "That one's practice," he muttered. Lily giggled. "It looks like a monster." Ridge carved a smile into the burned side with a fork, making Lily laugh harder. Soon, they were both laughing, the sound filling the small kitchen that had been silent for so many years. That afternoon, Martha visited to check on them. She found them in the backyard, Ridge patiently teaching Lily how to ride the small bicycle he'd purchased the day before. "Just keep pedaling," he encouraged, holding the back of the seat as she wobbled forward. "I've got you." Martha watched them from the back door, smiling at the transformation in the man she'd first met in a hospital room just weeks ago. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Martha sat with Ridge on the porch. "You're doing well with her," she said. Ridge looked out at the darkening yard. "She makes it easy." "Nothing about this is easy," Martha countered gently. "But you're giving her exactly what she needs." That night, Ridge checked on Lily before going to bed himself. She was sleeping peacefully, floppy tucked under her arm. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching the rise and fall of her chest. Something had changed in him these past days. The weight he'd carried for so long felt lighter. In the simple moments, reading stories, making breakfast, watching birds, he'd found a peace he'd forgotten existed. As Ridge turned to go to his own room, a thought struck him with unexpected force. This happiness they'd found together, fragile as it seemed, might actually last. For the first time in years, Ridge allowed himself to believe in a future worth living for. The Sunday afternoon sun warmed the backyard as Ridge watched Lily chase bubbles. She giggled, jumping up with her arms stretched toward the sky, trying to catch the shimmering orbs before they popped. Ridge sat in a lawn chair, the plastic bubble wand in his hand, dipping it into the solution before sending another wave of bubbles into the air. "More, Ridge! More bubbles!" Lily called, her face bright with joy. Ridge smiled and obliged, blowing gently to create a stream of bubbles that floated on the breeze. The simple pleasure of watching her play eased something in his chest. These quiet moments had become precious to him over the past week. "Look, I got one!" Lily held up her finger where a bubble had landed briefly before bursting. "Did you see?" "I saw." Ridge nodded. "Good catch, kid." He stood up to blow another batch of bubbles, but a sudden wave of dizziness hit him. The yard seemed to tilt beneath his feet. Ridge blinked hard, trying to clear his vision as a sharp pain squeezed his chest. The bubble wand slipped from his fingers, clattering against the patio stones. "Ridge?" Lily's voice sounded far away. He tried to speak, to reassure her, but no words came out. The pain intensified, crushing his ribs like a vice. Cold sweat broke out across his forehead as he staggered forward, reaching for the chair. His fingers grazed the plastic before his legs gave way beneath him. Ridge fell hard onto the patio, the concrete rough against his cheek. Through blurry vision, he saw Lily's sandals running toward him, heard her frightened voice calling his name. "Ridge! Ridge! Get up!" Small hands pushed at his shoulder. "Please get up!" He wanted to tell her it was okay, that she shouldn't be scared, but he couldn't make his mouth work. The pain radiated through his chest and down his left arm, stealing his breath. Black spots danced at the edges of his vision. Lily's face appeared above him, her eyes wide with fear. "Ridge, what's wrong?" He managed to whisper, "Phone. Get phone." Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she nodded and ran inside. Ridge fought to stay conscious, focusing on the sound of her footsteps. He couldn't leave her alone. Not like this. Lily returned moments later, the cordless phone clutched in her small hands. "I got it!" Her voice trembled. "What do I do?" Ridge forced his fingers to move, pressing 911 with fumbling motions. He put the phone on speaker and let it fall beside his head as a dispatcher's voice answered. 911. "What's your emergency?" "My..." "Ridge fell down," Lily said, her voice high with panic. "He won't get up." The dispatcher's voice remained calm. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily." She knelt beside Ridge, her small hand finding his. "Ridge is sick. Please help him." Ridge listened as the dispatcher asked questions about their address. Lily knew it. Martha had made sure of that, and recited it carefully. Pride mingled with fear in Ridge's chest as he squeezed Lily's hand weakly. "Good job," he whispered. Tears rolled down Lily's cheeks as she leaned close to him. "Don't go away," she pleaded. "Please don't go away." The pain in his chest tightened. Ridge knew what was happening. The doctors had warned him about his injuries, about the damage that might still be lurking. He'd ignored the warning signs for days. The shortness of breath, the occasional sharp pains, the fatigue. "I'm trying," he managed to say. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Lily's face brightened slightly. "They're coming to help you." Ridge nodded, fighting to keep his eyes open. Lily's hand in his felt like the only real thing in the world. He held onto it, afraid of what might happen if he let go. The ambulance arrived in a blur of activity. Paramedics rushed into the backyard, gently moving Lily aside as they worked on Ridge. Their voices were urgent, but professional as they checked his vitals and lifted him onto a stretcher. "Is he going to be okay?" Lily asked, her voice small beneath the commotion. One of the paramedics paused to kneel beside her. "We're taking good care of him." As they wheeled Ridge toward the ambulance, Lily tried to follow, her face streaked with tears. "I want to go with him." A female paramedic crouched down to Lily's level. "We need to take care of Ridge right now. Is there someone we can call to stay with you?" "Martha," Ridge whispered from the stretcher. "Call Martha." Lily stood in the driveway, watching as they loaded Ridge into the ambulance. Her small body shook with silent sobs, one hand still reaching toward him. The last thing Ridge saw before the ambulance doors closed was Lily's frightened face, her eyes wide with the fear he'd promised she'd never have to feel again. The fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room cast harsh shadows across Martha's worried face. She sat with Lily, who hadn't stopped asking about Ridge since they arrived 3 hours ago. The little girl's shoes dangled above the floor as she clutched a stuffed bear a nurse had given her. "When can we see him?" Lily asked, for what felt like the 100th time. Martha squeezed her small hand. "Soon, sweetheart. The doctors are helping him right now." Lily's bottom lip trembled. "He fell down. He wouldn't get up." "You did exactly the right thing calling for help," Martha assured her. "You were very brave." A doctor in blue scrubs approached them, his face serious beneath his surgical cap. "Ms. Green?" "I'm Dr. Patel. We've stabilized Mr. Callahan. You can see him now, but just for a few minutes." Martha stood, still holding Lily's hand, How is he? The doctor glanced at Lily and lowered his voice. We should discuss his condition privately first. Martha nodded, understanding. She knelt beside Lily. Sweetie, can you stay with this nice nurse for just a minute? I need to talk to the doctor, and then we'll go see Ridge together. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Is Ridge going to heaven like my mommy did? The question hung in the air, heartbreaking in its directness. Martha pulled Lily into a hug. The doctors are doing everything they can. She couldn't bring herself to make promises she wasn't sure could be kept. A kind-faced nurse came over. I heard someone here likes drawing. Would you like to make a picture for Ridge while you wait? Lily nodded reluctantly, allowing herself to be led to a small table with crayons and paper. Martha watched her for a moment before following Dr. Patel to a quiet corner. I won't sugarcoat this, the doctor said once they were alone. Mr. Callahan suffered a major cardiac event related to the injuries from his previous attack. There was significant damage we didn't catch earlier because he left against medical advice after the initial injuries. Martha closed her eyes briefly. How bad is it? The internal bleeding from his previous injuries caused complications. Some of the damage to his heart is irreversible. Dr. Patel's voice was gentle but firm. We've stabilized him for now, but his condition is very serious. Will he recover? The doctor hesitated. We're doing everything we can, but I need to be honest with you. His heart has sustained serious damage. We're looking at options, but given his overall condition, he paused. He should prepare for the possibility that his time may be limited. Martha felt her throat tighten. How limited? It's difficult to say with certainty. Weeks, maybe months with proper care and medication. I'm sorry. Martha glanced back at Lily, who was focused on her drawing, crayon clutched tightly in her small hand. That little girl just found someone to trust after losing everything, she whispered. This will destroy her. Dr. Patel followed her gaze. He's asking to see both of you. Room 4 and 12. Just keep the visit brief for now. He needs rest. Martha collected Lily and her drawing, then headed to Ridge's room. The hallway seemed endless, each step heavier than the last, as she wondered how to protect a child from another devastating loss. They found Ridge connected to various machines, his normally imposing frame looking smaller beneath the hospital sheets. His eyes were closed when they entered, but they fluttered open at the sound of Lily's voice. Ridge! Lily rushed forward, stopping uncertainly at the edge of the bed when she saw all the tubes and wires. Hey, kid! Ridge's voice was raspy, but he managed a smile. Come here. Martha helped Lily climb carefully onto the chair beside the bed. Lily held out her drawing, a colorful picture of two stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. I made this for you, she said. It's us. Ridge took the drawing with a shaking hand. It's the best picture I've ever seen. Martha stepped outside briefly when Dr. Patel appeared at the door. They spoke in hushed tones, and when she returned, she found Ridge watching her with knowing eyes. Lily had fallen asleep against his side, emotionally exhausted. When the nurse came to take Lily to get some juice, leaving them alone, Ridge spoke. How bad? Martha sat in the chair beside him. They want to run more tests. Martha. His voice was firm, despite its weakness. Don't lie to me. She met his gaze, seeing the understanding already there. It's not good, Ridge. Your heart was damaged worse than they thought. Ridge nodded slowly. How long? Martha reached for his hand. Dr. Patel said, possibly weeks, maybe months with treatment. Ridge closed his eyes, absorbing the news. When he opened them again, they were fixed on the doorway where Lily had disappeared. She can't know, not yet. Ridge, I need time, he interrupted. Time to make sure she'll be okay after... He couldn't finish the sentence. Martha squeezed his hand, feeling the roughness of his calluses. What do you need me to do? Ridge's eyes were filled with determination, despite the machines beeping around him. Help me make what time I have left count for her. The morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, casting thin stripes across Ridge's bed. He'd barely slept, his mind churning with the doctor's words from yesterday. Limited time, weeks, maybe months. Each beat of his damaged heart seemed to tick like a countdown clock. Martha arrived early, bringing Lily, who rushed to his bedside with a bright smile that made his chest ache in ways the doctors couldn't measure. I brought you another picture. She proudly displayed a crayon drawing of what looked like a house. That's where we live. Ridge took the paper, his hands feeling numb. It's real nice, kid. The words came out flatter than he intended. Martha shot him a concerned glance. Lily, why don't you go ask the nurse for some water for Ridge? When the little girl skipped out, Martha leaned closer. You okay? Ridge looked away, focusing on the window. Just tired. The doctors say you might be able to go home tomorrow if the medication stabilizes your condition. She waited for his reaction, but Ridge remained silent, his jaw tight. When Lily returned, Ridge found himself watching her from a distance, as though already seeing her through a veil of separation. Each smile, each small gesture of her tiny hands, became something precious to memorize, yet painful to witness. Throughout the morning, Ridge answered Lily's constant chatter with short responses, his voice growing quieter as the hours passed. When she showed him the card she made with the nurse, he nodded without really looking. When she told him about the puppy she saw in the hospital garden, he merely grunted. By afternoon, Martha noticed the change. While Lily colored nearby, she pulled her chair close to Ridge's bed. What's happening? She whispered. Ridge's weathered face hardened. You know exactly what's happening. Pushing her away won't protect either of you. He turned to face her, his eyes haunted. What am I supposed to do, Martha? Let her get more attached? Then what? She loses someone else? His voice cracked slightly. I'm trying to make it easier. Martha shook her head. There's no easy way through this, Ridge. But distance isn't kindness. Ridge closed his eyes, unable to respond. When he opened them again, he found Lily watching him with a worried expression. She'd stopped coloring, her crayon frozen mid-stroke. Later that afternoon, when they brought Ridge back from another round of tests, he pretended to sleep. Through barely open eyes, he watched Lily sitting quietly in the corner chair, her legs swinging, occasionally looking up at him with uncertainty clouding her small face. The next day brought similar silence. Ridge answered questions from doctors in clipped sentences. He took his medications without complaint. But when Lily tried to show him a book a nurse had given her, he simply nodded and turned away, claiming he needed rest. Each rejection was deliberate, each moment of distance carefully constructed, a wall he was building to protect her from the pain of his eventual absence. By evening, Lily had grown quiet too. Her usual stream of stories and questions dried up. She sat on the small visitor's couch, hugging her stuffed bear tightly against her chest. Martha returned from talking with the doctors, her face somber. Ridge, they're saying you can go home tomorrow morning. I've made some arrangements to help with... It doesn't matter, Ridge interrupted, his voice hollow. Lily looked up sharply at his tone. Martha sighed. I need to fill out some paperwork. I'll be back in a few minutes. After she left, the room fell into heavy silence. Ridge stared at the ceiling, counting the tiles, trying to ignore the weight of Lily's gaze. The machines beeped steadily, marking each precious second he was wasting in fear. Finally, he heard a small rustling as Lily slid off the couch. Her footsteps were almost silent as she approached his bed. She didn't climb up or reach for his hand like she usually would. She simply stood there, watching him with eyes that seemed too knowing for her, 4 years. Ridge? Her voice was tiny, uncertain. He turned his head slightly. Yeah, kid? Lily's fingers twisted in the hem of her shirt. Her chin trembled as she looked up at him, eyes swimming with tears that broke through his carefully constructed walls. "Are you going to leave me too?" The question hung in the air between them, simple, yet devastating in its understanding. Ridge felt something crack inside his chest that had nothing to do with his physical injuries. The fear in her eyes mirrored his own, and in that moment, he saw the cruelty of his distance. Not protection, but abandonment started early. His throat tightened as the defenses he'd been building crumbled completely. Ridge sat in his hospital bed, watching as the last rays of evening sunlight faded from his window. The weight of Lily's question still hung in the room, even hours later. Her words, "Are you going to leave me too?" had shattered something inside him. Martha returned after dinner, finding Ridge deep in thought. Lily had finally fallen asleep on the small visitor's couch, her stuffed bear clutched tightly in her arms. "She wore herself out crying," Ridge said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "I've been a fool, Martha." Martha pulled up a chair beside his bed. "You're scared. That's normal. I can't push her away, not when she's already lost so much." He looked over at Lily's sleeping form. "But I also can't pretend everything's going to be okay when it's not." Ridge shifted in his bed, wincing at the pain that radiated through his chest. "I need your help. I need to make sure she's taken care of, no matter what happens to me." Martha nodded, understanding immediately. "What do you have in mind?" "I don't have much," Ridge admitted. "But what I do have, I want to use for her. My house, my bike, whatever savings I've managed to scrape together. It's not a fortune, but it's something." He reached for the water glass on his side table, his hands trembling slightly. "Can you help me set up some kind of trust for her? Something that makes sure the money goes to her education, her future?" Martha pulled a small notebook from her purse. "I know a good lawyer who could help with that. We can start working on it tomorrow." Ridge's eyes didn't leave Lily. "That's not all. I need to know she'll be with someone who'll love her if I can't be there." The words caught in his throat. "Someone who'll understand her." "Have you thought about who that might be?" Martha asked gently. Ridge shook his head. "I don't have family. The guys in the club, they mean well, but they're not exactly parent material." He paused. "What about you, Martha? You've already been watching out for her." Martha's expression softened. "Ridge, I'm in my 60s with arthritis and a job that takes everything I've got. I can be part of her life, absolutely, but she needs someone who can keep up with a growing child." "Then who?" The desperation in his voice was palpable. "I might have an idea," Martha said thoughtfully. "There's a couple I've worked with before, Tom and Sarah Bailey. They've been foster parents for years, and they're the kind of people who keep in touch with every child who's ever stayed with them. They have a small farm, just outside town." Ridge listened intently as Martha described the couple, their warmth, their patience, their knack for making children feel safe and loved. "Would they take her, knowing about me? About my connection to her?" Ridge asked. Martha nodded. "That's exactly why I thought of them. They understand that children need continuity, need to hold on to the people who matter to them." For the first time that day, Ridge felt a small measure of relief. "I want to meet them, if that's possible." "I'll arrange it," Martha promised. "And Ridge, this doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're making sure she's safe, no matter what." Ridge looked down at his rough, weathered hands. "Tomorrow, we start putting it all on paper. The trust, the guardianship plan, all of it." Martha reached over and squeezed his arm. "I'll bring everything we need. We'll make it happen." Across the room, Lily stirred in her sleep, her small face peaceful for the moment. Ridge watched her, his determination growing stronger. "One more thing," he said quietly. "I want to record some messages for her. For birthdays, for when she starts school, for when she's older and might not remember me clearly." His voice grew thick. I want her to know who I was and what she meant to me." Martha's eyes glistened. "That's a beautiful idea, Ridge." As night settled fully over the hospital, Ridge felt something shift inside him. Not acceptance of what might come, but resolve to face it with the same courage he'd shown that day at the diner. He would ensure Lily had everything she needed for her future, even if he couldn't be there to see it unfold. Ridge stepped through his front door with slow, careful movements, one hand gripping the doorframe for support. Lily hovered beside him, her small face watching his every step with worried eyes. "I'm okay, kiddo," he assured her, his voice gentler than anyone in town would have believed possible from the feared Hell's Angel. "Just need to take it slow." The doctors had warned against leaving the hospital so soon, but Ridge had insisted. If his time was limited, he wouldn't spend it surrounded by beeping machines and antiseptic smells. He'd spend it with Lily, in the place that had somehow become their home. Martha followed behind them with his medication and a folder full of paperwork they'd completed over the past 3 days. The trust documents, the guardianship arrangements, all of it signed and filed. The weight of those papers had lifted something from Ridge's shoulders, allowing him to focus on what mattered now. "You sure you don't need me to stay?" Martha asked, setting his pills on the kitchen counter. Ridge shook his head. "We'll be fine." He glanced at Lily, who was already digging through her small collection of books. "We've got plans, don't we, Lil?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, holding up a book about stars. "We're gonna read this one tonight." After Martha left, Ridge eased himself onto the couch. Everything hurt, but he worked to hide it from Lily. She crawled up beside him with her book, and they spent the evening reading about constellations and planets. Ridge promised they'd look for stars that night if the sky was clear. The next morning, Ridge woke early, despite his exhaustion. He wanted to make every day count. In the kitchen, he fumbled with pancake batter, while Lily watched from a chair pulled up to the counter. "These might not look pretty," he warned, as he poured the first one into the pan. Lily giggled when the pancake came out lopsided. "It looks like a funny hat." Ridge laughed too, a deep rumble that surprised him. "Then, that's what we'll call it. Funny hat pancakes." After breakfast, Ridge sat on the porch swing, while Lily rode her tricycle up and down the sidewalk. He'd bought it for her the week before his collapse, and watching her pedal with determined concentration filled his chest with a warmth that pushed back against the pain. "Watch me, Ridge," she called out, attempting to make a turn. "I see you, Lily. You're doing great," he called back, not taking his eyes off her for a second. Later that afternoon, Ridge pulled out some old photo albums he'd rediscovered in a closet. There weren't many pictures. His life hadn't been one for documenting. But there were a few from when he was younger. Before the loss. Before the club. "Is that you?" Lily asked, pointing to a photo of a much younger Ridge sitting on his first motorcycle. "That's me. About 20 years ago." He turned the page, revealing a rare photo of him smiling, arm around a young woman. "And that's someone I loved very much." "She's pretty," Lily said, tracing the woman's face with her finger. "Yes, she was." Ridge didn't elaborate, but he didn't change the subject either. For the first time in years, he looked at the photo without turning away. As evening approached, Ridge made a simple dinner, and afterward, he taught Lily how to play Go Fish with a deck of cards he found in a drawer. Her face lit up with each small victory, and Ridge found himself deliberately letting her win just to see her excitement. When the sun began to set, Ridge wrapped a blanket around his shoulders and took Lily's hand. "Let's go watch the colors change," he suggested. They settled on the porch steps, Lily nestled against his side. The sky blazed with orange and pink, the clouds outlined in gold. Ridge's arm wrapped protectively around Lily's small shoulders. "It's so pretty," Lily whispered, her head resting against his chest. "Yes, it is," Ridge agreed, but he was looking at her, not the sky. Lily turned her face up to his. I'm glad I found you that day. Ridge swallowed hard. Me too, kiddo. Me too. They sat together in comfortable silence as the colors deepened and the first stars began to appear. Ridge pointed out the evening star to Lily, just as he'd promised from their book. Make a wish, he told her. Lily closed her eyes tightly for a moment, then opened them with a smile. Did you make one too? Ridge nodded, his throat too tight for words. His wish was simple, that whatever time he had left would be enough to fill her heart with memories of being loved. That she would remember, even years from now, that someone had once looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. As darkness settled around them, Ridge held Lily close, both of them watching the stars appear one by one, neither in a hurry to go inside. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.